Hello everyone, and welcome to the April 2021 edition of the EPA Insights interview. Now this month I'm joined by someone I know you'll find both enlightening and inspiring in equal measure, because rather than representing a payments peer, she's representing a payments purchaser. Her career began in Parliament and progressed on the fast track through charities such as NSPCC, Age UK and the MS Society, and she's always contributed to society as a board trustee of the Young Women's Trust and the King's Fund, and as an NED for NHS England as well. I think you'll all relate to her because she's a collaborator. For example, she recently joined 46 other cancer charities to speak with One Cancer Voice on what was needed from UK government and the NHS to plot a route out of the pandemic and towards world-leading cancer services. We have at least two things in common. She also studied at Manchester University, and she also held a job with the title of Director General. There's not many people out there like that. So please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, share a little bit about herself and her thoughts on how she sees the world post-pandemic, from the perspective of someone whose organisation's payments revenues exceed £500 million annually, the CEO of the UK's largest charity, Cancer Research UK, Mitchell OBE.
Oh, I'm delighted to be with you.
Look, I'm really honoured to have a chance to chat. And when I had a look at what you've achieved in your career, you've actually been what almost people would almost say is superhuman. So what is it that continues to motivate you and drive you?
Goodness me, I'm not human. I'm just motivated by social change, working with people from all sorts of different backgrounds, and currently 100% focused on beating cancer.
That's a very big cause. And can you share some information about cancer and what a big deal it is for us now?
It is a huge deal. All of us, I suspect, have had our lives touched by cancer in one way or another. If we're born between the 1960 and beyond, 1 in 2 of us is likely to get cancer. But
Wow.
Thankfully, we're living through a period where we've seen cancer survival double in the last 40 years. So it's an issue that has devastated many people's lives, but because of life-saving research, we're seeing cancer survival improve in this country. And my mission, and the mission of my charity, is to make cancer survival better for each and every family here in the UK, and contribute through life-saving research to humankind around the world.
Yeah, brilliant. It's a great. Last year, the last 12 or 15 months has been unexpectedly challenging, I think, for all of us. I mean, how did this affect the charity sector, and what have your team and you done to overcome some of these challenges?
Well, for each and every one of us, hasn't it? And for Cancer Research UK particularly, we went through huge changes and challenges throughout the year. The significant one of those challenges is because we had to close our shops, and you'll be all familiar with our shops on the high street.
Yes.
And we were unable to run many of our sporting events, including, for example, Race for Life, which usually runs in every town and city across the UK. We've seen a significant drop in our income. So we're predicting, because of COVID, 160 million drop in income in the last financial year, and expecting to see a 300 million drop over a 3-year period. So it's been very challenging from a financial perspective. Also challenging because in the early stages of COVID, research was brought to a standstill, and our mission was made harder as people with cancer had tests and treatments delayed, and clinical trials were paused or postponed. Now, thankfully, we've seen over more recent months cancer treatments and services getting back on track, but we remain today with a very challenging situation. We've had 3 million people who've not had the screening that they would have had in a normal year, and now 47,000 people usually would have been treated in a typical year who haven't come into the NHS. So we are very worried that in a year of COVID, cancer has been in the shadows, but It certainly will come out of the shadows, because we know those people who haven't had their treatments, their tests, are going to be likely diagnosed later. And when you're diagnosed later with cancer, cancer survival is not as good. So big challenges for us as a charity, big challenges for people with cancer, and big challenges for the research and scientific community. And what we've had to do in response, if that's helpful, is I've had to lead through a significant period of change, look at the challenges, look at the opportunities, make some change. Sadly, we had to reduce our research spending from 400 million to about 300 million for the next 3 or 4 years. And why that's so devastating, it means, because research saves lives ultimately, is there'll be fewer breakthroughs, fewer new treatments, and of course cancer survival slowing as a consequence of that. I've also had to reduce the size of my staff team by 25%. 500 posts were deleted as a consequence of the financial pressure that we've been under. But we've also taken the opportunity to change. So I don't want your listeners just to think it's a negative story. We've become much better at our digital and data capabilities. We've looked at where we can innovate. We've operated and changed at a speed we didn't think possible before COVID. So I think it's a story of two halves. It's been the best of times and the worst of times, but we're now in a strong position, strong foundations, and looking forward to the future to further accelerate progress against our mission.
So that's just one wonderful thing to hear, that in light of the ironic, it's ironic that we've been trying very, very hard for the sake of everybody's well-being to keep the pandemic under control. And when you look at what's happening in India, thank goodness we have. But equally, it's kind of storing up problems for us further down the line, because the people who were going to be getting predictions of problems that they could have cured early have not been able to benefit from that sort of thing. But equally, you're saying it's kind of accelerated the pace at which you're going to be better prepared for the future as it comes and as it unrolls.
Well, what we know is we cannot carry on doing what we were doing before the pandemic. Unfortunately, the UK lags behind many comparable countries around the world in terms of cancer survival. So doing what we did before isn't good enough. That's why we're also pushing government quite hard and the NHS to have a new plan which not only deals with the backlog of all those people who've not been tested, come forward or treated. It has to invest significantly in workforce, new kit, and have cancer as a top priority. But you're absolutely right, it's changed the culture of our charity. I do think we've been more innovative, more agile, quicker in our decision making, and that's brought many benefits. And so when I look to the future, I think the future is one where we would have learned a lot as cancer research gave. We have taken a hit, but we'll bounce back, and we'll bounce back strong, not least because of the fantastic support of many of our very generous supporters who've stuck with us throughout COVID. And we hope we'll be able to inspire them to continue to give to us to fund life-saving research in the future.
Yeah, certainly when you think about how people's disposable income has increased and how much they've been able to save, hopefully some of the things they'll be spending will be spending on looking after their causes, such as yours. So, and we're talking about the issue of money here. So let's talk a little bit more about that, because our industry also has changed enormously in the last, even just in the last year. And the thing we're also hearing is speed of decision making, pace of innovation, and also changing behavior both within our industry and for those people who are shopping and using payments to buy things. When you think of the payment sector, and essentially you take a lot of money in from various causes, various sources, what impressions spring to mind when you think of the payments industry, if you do, or maybe you don't even think of the payments industry as what impressions spring to mind?
Well, I think it's a really important sector, and we could benefit from working more closely together to help customers like us more easily vary to use the various products that are available or switch providers without significant cost. I mean, if you think about what's our interest, we're interested in great user experience from payments products that we use. And this isn't always a consistent experience currently for our staff and volunteers. We need clear information provided so we can understand where the money's come from. Very important.
Yes,
And,
yeah.
Getting that consistently provided is critical. Fraud, and fraud attempts. Recently, these have increased. We've introduced a whole new functionality which has helped reduce them. And you can imagine we're very driven by safety of our donors and supporters as it relates to fraud. So we think it's terribly important the payments sector help us prevent fraud and can help the sector in keeping donors safe, really.
Yes, it's interesting you talk about the source of funds. That's increasingly important. It's what we call the money laundering sector. And is that something that is now of greater concern to you? Because I suppose, you want to have good money. You don't want to have bad money.
It's absolutely essential we understand where our money is coming from as a charity, and obviously we've got a whole series of processes in place which enable us to do that. But I think running with the highest levels of governance, trust in the platforms that we use is incredibly important to our ongoing relationship and reputation. So a strong partnership with your sector, I think, is important.
So what are we doing well, and what would you like to see us do differently, less, more in future? I mean, how can we be better able to serve and support organisations like yours do the great work that you do?
Well, I think are several things. I think positively, some providers do make the data flow more seamless and reconciliations easier, although that's not always common. So I think more of that would be great. I think there are a whole range of issues that if we addressed, we could move forward together. Data reconciliation, ease of tracing data and process returns is very important. We have many different sources of income, coming through different income streams. I suppose the number of platforms means the sector data output can be confusing. Data is sent to us in different frequencies and different groupings with different references. So that makes income difficult to reconcile. And it would be great if payment providers could integrate with existing platforms. I mean, I think that would make a huge difference.
Isn't that interesting? Make it easier for you. And things like reconciliation, right? It is such a fundamental part of being able to run a financial system. And if you can't do that easily, that can become very costly in time and effort. And
And we have an important KPI that we work to. I mean, 80% in every pound goes to all our charitable activities. So we run the charity very efficiently. So the more we can streamline our processes, minimise unnecessary bureaucracy and cost, the more money goes straight to research. And that is terribly important for us and the people who give to us.
Wow, that's phenomenal. I didn't know you stood for that. That's a great standard to be hitting. Amazing.
And of course, it relates with our donors because they want to know money is getting straight through to research.
Of course they do. Yeah, I think that's what they're looking to do, is to make a difference through the research that you guys do. So, one of the things I've noticed, and of course we've all had, I was just chatting to my personal trainer this morning actually about how little time I seem to be allowed to reflect on the year that we've had. And while preparing for this chat, I was thinking a lot about the changing nature of the way in which we're doing business, and even over the weekend, how sustainability is increasingly important to the decisions that we're making, ultimately the future of our world. Do you have also a sense that things are changing, that it's not just that that we're looking after the things because they're good and green, but because actually they're an essential part of who we are and the future we hold? To what extent do you agree with that statement? Have you seen similar things happening?
I think the world around us is changing hugely, both in terms of how do we come together to partner to drive impact and change. As a charity, we partner with commercial partnerships through cancer research technology, because we believe through those commercial partnerships that promising ideas will be turned into successful cancer therapeutics, vaccines, diagnostics and enabling technologies. We partner with corporate partnerships. For example, Tesco's is a major partnership for us with the British Heart Foundation and diabetes. And there it's because we believe passionately in prevention and supporting people in the workplace, as well as them giving to make healthier choices and reduce their cancer risks and other long-term chronic risks. And in relation to corporate responsibility, environmental and sustainability, absolutely, I think we are all thinking through very carefully how we can do good as well as act good and be good. I think you can't think about your long-term strategy without having sustainability at its heart. And I think we are living through quite significant changes. And of course, with the charity sector, many of the big issues of our day started out with small numbers of like-minded people forming charities to talk about, sustainability or climate change or social justice and how we beat cancer and how we support older people, and what we're seeing is, thankfully, I think, mission-led charities, of course, but increasingly with business, mission-led businesses who see their role beyond creating a profit or long-term shareholder value, but also doing good in the world. And I think it's important to think of the great partnerships that can be had with us and charities within that context, because it's an alignment, isn't it, of what I would say is not just a win-win, but a win-win-win.
Yeah, I love that, and we of course have the opportunity, I think, now, in light of the rapid pace of change, almost an openness that people have to adopt new ways of doing things that fundamentally challenge some of the capitalist beliefs of yesteryear, and how we have a chance perhaps now to I was interviewing David Craig from Refinitiv a few months ago about sustainable financial services, about sustainable payments, and I don't think sustainability will be something that sits often enough at the on the board agenda of the companies in our sector, and I think it should. And can you think of any other things you'd look for our sector to do to support you in being more efficient and more effective at enabling people to donate, but in terms of being either running more diverse companies or more sustainable organizations?
Well, I think there are several things. Firstly, think strategically about partnering with charities generally, and what a potential strategic partnership with Cancer Research UK could be. Of course, donate to us directly. I can't not say that in any setting. But really think about where business strategies align. I think that's so important. I'd say there's a big role, about making giving easier in the workplace. You can encourage colleagues to give through payroll giving, which allows you to donate based on your gross income rather than your net. I do that for my charity at the moment. It's a good way to give. But on an individual level, workplaces supporting people to take the time to educate their workforce about the signs and symptoms of cancer, to encourage people to go to the GP if you're worried about anything. I think, and thinking about your general well-being in the workplace is incredibly important. We know a whole number of cancers can be prevented through modifiable risk behaviours, not least don't smoke is critical, but obesity can lead to 13 different types of cancer, and that's a risk factor, and alcohol has an impact amongst others. So supporting people in the workplace to be as well as they can and make informed decisions about their own health is critical.
And of course, that allows them to be more sustainably productive, supportive employees. And you know, everybody wants to be working with well people. I think your simple, practical technique, your simple practical tips there about having the conversation around cancer in the workplace, but also making donating easier. One of our members is Pennies. You'll be familiar with. They do the top-up payment at the point of sale, but actually it's also people innovating with the charity sector in mind, perhaps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we're living through interesting times. I think you see a systemic change in the way business is thinking about long-term value. I think strategic partnerships with charities are a way of creating long-term value in a number of different ways. As you say, our experience of when we've worked with major corporate partners is it's an incredibly motivating issue for people to get behind, not only in terms of their own personal health, but also in raising money. It builds team morale, camaraderie, motivation, engagement. I think through how you can, with the expertise you've got, do good in the world and innovate with charities in mind, understand their business model and understand our drive to be absolutely as efficient as we possibly can be to ensure, you know, as many of those pounds and pennies get to frontline research as possible. And then think about new products and new markets, because we don't have to be tied to the way we've done things before. You know, we're living through an incredibly disruptive period of change, and through that disruption could be whole new models, new products, which strip out significant cost, which enable us to fund research at a greater level. And if you think money is our rate limiting step at the moment, I mean, I have the heartbreak of having to see our research cut at the moment and turning away forefront and outstanding research. That's some of the best research in the world to be funded. And we don't have the money to do that. So help us raise money, be more efficient, and think of new ways of working which transform the model about how we're doing it together today.
You know, Michelle, I was going to ask you to make some closing comments, but you've just made them. That was a really clear call to action for our community. Thank you very much. There's never enough time on these insights interviews to give, but you've helped us, I think, to understand it from your point of view, and given us a whole list of things that we've got to do differently, better, to make sure that the great work that you and your amazing team do going forward continues to be done as well as it can be. So thank you very much indeed, Mitchell OBE. Much appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.